Today on the podcast, we have Jim Hartzell. He's a native of Alabama and is an architect in Birmingham. Jim shares the same love of Scotland as Jeff and I do. He's been going to Scotland for 28 years now. He's fallen in love with Machrihanish, Dunaverty, a couple other courses. He's a member of those courses as well. We're going to talk about his book that he wrote on Sweeten's Cove in Tennessee and his new book that he's creating right now, which is about his month-long trip in Scotland.
Welcome, everyone, to another Travel Royally podcast. We're thrilled today to have our newest friend, Jim Hartzell. Some of you may be familiar with Jim. Jim's a native of Alabama. He's a practicing architect in Birmingham. He's the author of the book, The Secret Home of Golf. It's about the creation of Sweeten's Cove in Tennessee. He's also writing a new book about his experience from being in Scotland for a month this past year. He's a contributing writer to No Laying Up and The Lynx Diary. And I would say that Jim and I are kindred spirits when it comes to our love of Scotland and golf. So much so that we're both members of clubs in Scotland. And Jim has played, this is how we're different, he's played more diamonds in the rough in Scotland than any Scot I know, and certainly more than any American that I know. So, Jim, welcome to the Travel Royally podcast.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm always happy to talk Scottish golf. It's probably my favorite subject.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was actually a fan of yours before I knew it. I've been reading your articles in the Lynx Diary. By the way, I talked to Kenny Palace the other day. He said to say hi.
Yeah, Kenny's a great guy. I played Panmure with him in August, and he's a member there, and it's just such a good golf course. But yeah, we had a lot of fun, and those guys have been great to me. And I've got a story coming out in number 4 too on a little course on Aaron. So yeah, I've loved writing for them, and that their book is beautiful. You've obviously read it, but
right,
yeah, we just got the newest one sent to us a couple weeks ago. I actually had Kenny on the podcast as well a couple months ago.
Good.
And we had Murray Bothwell.
Yep. I know him as well.
He's I've never seen anyone so proud of their golf club, right? Prestwick St. Nicholas, according to him, is the greatest golf course that's ever been built. But Jim, I'll tell you what, I loved your articles on Cullen, on Dunaverty. The last caddy about Chris McBride at Prestwick was amazing. I'll tell you a story about that in a minute, but because I had a similar experience with the first caddies. That was the first course I ever played in Scotland. And I read another article of yours I thought was great on Peter Allis and the time that you met him at Prestwick.
It was just random. I mean, we were standing, that first tee, and we were just standing there, and I'm a huge fan of his. And I turned around, and walking around the corner of the clubhouse was Peter Allis. And I told my dad was with me, and I said, "That's Peter Allis." And he was like, "What?" And he was there to do something for the BBC, but they were trying to get ready with the cameras and stuff. And I'm not scared to talk to anybody, but I'm respectful of people. And I thought, I don't want to embarrass him or anything, but I walked over there and talked to him, and he was as nice as he could be. We talked for a couple of minutes, and then he did an interview. I think it was with the president or the secretary. But that was you just never know what you're going to run into at a place like that. Cause the first tee at the old course or Prestwick or something like that, there's no telling who you're going to see. But yeah, that was a fun little thing that happened on one of my early trips.
Well, with another thing that Jim and I share, our first trip over to Scotland was with our fathers. And in my case, Jim, we went to Prestwick was our first stop. And we stayed at a little guest house around the corner, and we get up, it's raining. And I said, "Dad, looks like we're rained out today." I have no idea what I'm talking about. And this, Jim, goes back to before they made decent waterproofs, right? You were wearing like nylon. You were soaked. Anyway, we get to the tee, we get to the clubhouse. we're standing on the tee and it's foggy and it looks like the moon out there, right? It's humpy and lumpy and you've got the Alps nearby. And so I pull out my driver and I go, where are we going? I mean, I couldn't tell where the hole was. And the caddy takes the club out of my hand, puts a 6-iron in my hand and tells me to hit it down that way. You can't even see the railway line
Right.
next to it. And my dad and I had 2 brothers that were caddies. They were probably 50 at the time, Donald and Ian. They were the funniest. Well, first of all, it's 9:00 on a Monday and they're drunk.
Right.
Right. They have not sobered up from the weekend. The stories they had to tell. And I was back there recently. Well, I was back there a couple of years ago. They both passed away from the drink, as they say over there. But these guys were real characters.
Yeah, I mean the caddies at Prestwick are the best, and I was talking to Chris when I wrote that story prior to my last trip, and I met him again this last trip, and we spent some time together, and he was telling me, that there's not as many caddies as there used to be, and he said, we're probably down to 15 or so, and he said not as many members take caddies anymore. Now he's booked up all the time, but I just think, especially at a place like Prestwick, that adds to the experience so much, and it just makes it more fun. I mean, they know. Somebody like Chris can tell you, if he tells you it's going to break an inch to the right, it's going to break an inch to the right. And I don't know. We've got to be friends. And that was probably the most fun story I've written, was the one about him. And we text a lot, and he was, I'm hoping I can go back this year and see him again. But yeah, he's been caddying there for almost 40 years. It's the only place he's ever worked. And just an amazing guy.
Well, I think that I agree with you. And what Hayden and I tell our guests is, particularly on the major courses, to take a caddy. If you're playing at a championship course, you want to have a good time. You want to play well. You paid a lot of money to play there. But, I would amend that. If I can get a caddy at a Dunaverty or a Murray, and being members of those clubs like you and I are, you've seen the emails where they say, hey, we've got 2 Americans coming over tomorrow. Does anyone want a caddy? Because we don't have caddies per se. So you get to walk with a member. I mean, I've even had that at Carnoustie, where I walked with an insurance salesman. I mean, it was wonderful.
You can do that. And people don't realize that. A lot of people don't. But if you're at Machrihanish or wherever, as you say, Lossiemouth or whatever, if you email them or call and say, look, can you find somebody to caddy for me? They'll get a kid or a member or somebody, and you'll have fun, and you'll, so I agree. You can do that too. And especially if you're only going to be there one time and you don't know the course, and it won't cost you a bunch of money. I mean, you got to tip. I always tell people to tip well, but you get so much out of that, and hearing the stories about the golf course. And so I'm a big proponent of meeting as many people as you can when you go on these trips. That's half the fun to me.
I agree with you. Well, Jim, let's start at the beginning. How did you come to golf?
Well, my dad, our family just played golf. As long as I can remember, I was at the golf course, and my dad and uncle played. Both my grandfathers played. I started going as early as I can remember. Every Sunday afternoon, I'd play with my grandfather at Roebuck in Birmingham for years and years. And then I played high school golf for 6 years. And, just something it's just something that's been a part of my life, and something that I love. And, it's a game that you always keep playing. And, I wasn't quite good enough to play in college, but I kept playing, and got my family into it as well. And it's just something when we'd go on vacations in the summer, we played golf. That's what we did for fun. It's just that was just the way we spent our free time.
Yeah, and you're from Alabama, right? We're familiar with the same courses. My home course, Grayson Valley. You grew up playing Trussell Country Club, Roebuck. You were talking about starting out playing golf. I started out doing the kid clinic at Trussell Country Club every Saturday morning. Do you know about that?
Was that Chris Rigdon?
Yeah, Chris Rigdon. Every morning, every Saturday morning, I would go out. We'd hit golf balls for an hour, play 4 or 5 holes, and that was pretty much every Saturday if I didn't have a football game or a
Yeah.
baseball game that I had to do.
The first lesson I ever had was from Chris Rigdon. So yeah, it's now I call Trussell Country Club Cahaba Valley. So anybody that from Alabama that's listening that's old like me will remember that. But yeah, I love that area, and I got a lot of friends that live in Trussville and Chalkville Clay area. So yeah.
Yeah, and we both actually started our golf on Roebuck back when me and my dad would have our trolleys, and it was $13 after 2 o'clock. We do that almost every weekend, and then once my uncle actually owns Grayson Valley, so we started playing there when I got in high school. But yeah,
what you probably don't know, Jim, is Hayden was the quarterback at Chalkville Clay, and then he played at Cincinnati.
Okay,
where
great.
I went to school, and he was the quarterback leading up to Ritter, who's their current quarterback. And so he married my daughter, and
well, congratulations.
He got an immediate okay vote because he's a Bearcat.
Yeah, well, the great season. I'm sorry about the Bama game, but that was, Bama played a good game. I thought Cincinnati played good actually, but
yeah,
Bama, that was one of their better games.
It's a solid game for sure.
Yeah, I think they were one of 3 teams to hold Alabama under 28 points.
Yeah,
in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Also, Cincinnati's last 2 losses in the last 2 years were playing in the championship, Georgia and Alabama. We played Georgia in the bowl game last year.
Yep.
So what led you to fall in love with Scotland as you have?
Well, my dad's favorite tournament was the Open Championship, the British Open, and I just remember watching that with him when I was a kid. I can vaguely remember the 75 one when Watson won it at Carnoustie, and I remember a little bit about Miller at Birkdale. I remember Sevy playing there, and my dad, I can remember him talking about that. But the one I really remember, 77, I think I was 9 or 10, and
Duel in the Sun,
and I remember watching the last 2 days with my dad, and he was really interested too, because people forget that Hubert Green from Birmingham finished 3rd in that tournament, and he was like 12 or 13 strokes behind Nicholas in 3rd place. But we were just, and back then, you guys know, they wouldn't show it until, they'd show they'd start on number 12 or something and show the last 6 or 7 holes. And anyway, I just remembered that tournament and Nicholas and Watson, and the course was just burnt out and the ball was rolling. And I just remember, and I can't explain this, but I just got transfixed by this golf course. And I started studying the open courses, and my dad wanted to go, and I remember him saying, we're going to go one day, we're going to go over there. And then, that's really how it started. And I started buying books when I was pretty young. I've still got books from when I was a teenager. And, and then when I got out of college, he said he wanted to go, and he go over there, and he said, look, you can plan the whole thing yourself. He said, the only thing I want to do is play the old course. And other than that, we can go wherever you want. And that's how it all started. And that was 28 years ago. So,
wow. Almost got you, Jeff.
Well,
you at 25 years?
I think he's been going longer, but I've gone every year.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. I've had a few years where I couldn't make it over. It's an undertaking. You got to be able to make it work with your work. And, fortunately, as I've gotten older, I've had a little bit more flexibility, and, but I was lucky to go a lot when I was younger too. And that's all due to my dad. And, we had some great times over there.
Is he still alive?
He is. He's 78, and we play golf probably once a month, maybe twice. He still gets out, usually just 9 holes, but he loves it. And we'll go to a little course around here. I take him up to Sweeten's Cove and play 9 every once in a while. And so yeah, he's still, to this day, we talk about those trips. I mean, he can tell you about the round he shot at Denaverty in 1994. Still talks about that, and he was a good player too. And so anyway, yeah, that's kind of how it started, and it kind of grew from there.
Well, I'll tell you what, I took my dad for his 60th birthday 25 years ago. And so, Jim, I spent the summer there, this past summer, the whole summer, 7 weeks. And I was getting ready to tee off at the new course at St. Andrews. And my phone starts ringing, and I hadn't picked up my phone in weeks. And it's my daughter, so I take it, and she's sobbing. My father passed away suddenly. And the eerie thing, Jim, I was standing not near the spot, but on the spot where we had our picture taken 25 years earlier. And it was a very eerie feeling to know that that's what had happened. But the funny thing about that first trip, Jim, and you may have felt the same thing, there was a point where my dad said, "Jeff, why aren't you taking more pictures?" And I said, "Because I'm coming back." And I don't know about you, but I had fallen madly in love with Scotland before I ever got there. The research that you did to plan your trip, and
yeah,
I did.
I'll tell you the story. I mean, I had read To the Lynx Land by Michael Bamberger right when I got out of college, and to me it's the best golf book that's ever been written. I've given it away, I don't know how many times, to people over the years, and tell them, read this before you go over there. And I actually called Michael Bamberger. He worked at the Philadelphia Inquirer, and this was before the internet and stuff. And I found the number for the Inquirer and called up there and got him on the phone. And he was young then, 28, 20. I don't even know how old he was. And he talked to me for about an hour about the places to go over there and what he had done. And that's how I planned it. I mean, we went to the old course. We went to Carnoustie, and I think we played North Berwick. We played Prestwick, but then we stayed in Machrihanish for a week, and played Denaverty and Machrihanish. And that was kind of the end of our trip, was that whole, staying there for a week. And I totally got that idea from that book. And because quite frankly, I mean, I had never heard of even as much as stuff that I had researched. I'd never heard of Machrihanish until I read that book.
Right.
So I give him a lot of credit, and I give that book a lot of credit. He also talks about Dornick in there. Oh, we went to Cruden Bay because of that book. We went to Cruden Bay when there wasn't anything there but a little white clubhouse that's about 1/10 of the size of the one they have now. It was down by the first tee, and there were no Americans going there. So I totally give that book a lot of credit. And I still tell people, if they can find it, it's out of print now, but if they can find it, it's one of the best.
Yeah, I've got that. And the other one that I liked, Blasted Heaths and Blessed Greens.
Yep. Finnegan.
Jim.
Yep.
Finnegan.
He's one of the best. He's the other one. You hit the nail on the head. He's the other one that I tell people to read. And I'm not acting like I'm not making these stories up. This stuff has just happened to me. But I was in St. Andrews in 1997. No, it's 2000. I was there in 2000, and I was standing we were in the lobby of this Italian restaurant. It was one of the real popular ones there then. I can't remember the name of it. And I turned to my right, and Jim Finnegan was about 2 feet from me. And the reason, because I just read the book, and if you got that book, he had his picture. It was him because he had these big Coke bottle glasses, and you just knew it was him. And I just blurted out, I said, "You're James Finnegan." He goes, "Yes, I am." "Who are you?" And we stood there and talked for 30 minutes. I had just come back from Mockery on Isla. And I told him, I said, "Well, I've just come back from Mockery." And he was like, "Well, tell me about it." He wanted to know every detail about it. And he wound up writing his address down on a card and giving it to me. And we corresponded a few times over the years. I honestly, he's dead now, but he was such a nice man, and he's such a good writer. I patterned a lot of my writing about the way I write about golf courses. I know it's influenced by him because he just writes. He wrote about them so beautifully, and he loves Scotland. And anyway, but yeah, those two books are like my two Bibles, that I've had.
Well, he was such a gentleman. He was madly in love with his wife. She went on all the trips with him. She wasn't a golfer at all. I mean, and his book, I bought both of his books, the one on Scotland, the one on Ireland. They're just amazing.
They're great. I mean, he has the right idea. And I have to say that my travel over the years has been influenced by his books because, he talks about where he went to eat or what place he stayed and how much he loved it. And, I sort of thought, well, this guy he knows how to have a good time and get the full experience out of it. And, like you and I said before this started, you can make a mistake of just playing golf until you fall onto the ground. And you just don't need to do that. And I know it's hard when it may be your only trip or you've got 12 days or 10 days, but give yourself a little bit of time to see some stuff and go eat at a great restaurant and, make a reservation at some place and make it an event. I don't know. I have to say I got some of that from him because his books are all about not just the golf, which is great. He writes beautifully about it, but all these places that he saw and went to while he's there.
Well, I think, one of the things Hayden and I struggle with, we have people that want us to plan every minute that they're there. And one of the things we've told them is, look, you need time for serendipity. So like, as an example, I know you'll agree with this, Jim, like, hey, take a day, drive out of St. Andrews, go down the coast, find your favorite town. There are dozens of little towns that are, fishing harbors and small towns on the coast. Find your favorite restaurant, but I can plan your day every day, but you and I have had greater experiences just stumbling on stuff, stumbling on people.
We're so on the same page about this. I get a lot of messages from people about planning trips, and I tell them that every single time. Leave yourself a day or 2 or 3 where you have absolutely nothing planned. You're driving somewhere, you see a sign for, I don't know what, Isle of Skye or, who knows, and just go over there and see what you find out. I mean, you've got to do that. And I know it's hard and people say, I can't do that. I got to get here to here. You've got to let yourself have that sense of discovery. And that's half the fun of it to me. And so you're exactly right to tell people that. I tell them that all the time. And the people that do it, when they come back, they're like, man, you were right. We went that day, we went driving and we found this and that. And it was the most fun we ever had. It's such a good idea to do that. If you can.
Well, when they call, that should be your second piece of advice. Your first piece of advice should be to call Royal Links Golf Tours and have someone that knows what they're doing plan the trip. But
that was
we get your date.
Well,
so I've got. Go ahead.
I appreciate that. You guys are trying to make a living. I understand.
Hey, but something that really struck me about you, and I said, that you're somewhat unique, and in that, the guys that know laying up, they've got this term for guys that just want to go over and play the championship course and collect the bag tag. They call them bag tag berries, and you're clearly the opposite of that. You'd much rather prefer these lesser known courses. So how did that come about? Like, how do you find Dunaverty on your first trip, which is amazing?
Yeah, I mean, and I've written about this, and I'm actually in the book I'm working on now. It's actually in the first chapter. So I don't mind telling you because it's going to go into a lot more detail. But So we were at Macrahannis for a week, and we were staying in a bed and breakfast that was literally walking distance from the clubhouse. It was 2 or 3 houses down from the clubhouse. So I would get up every morning, and my dad I'd play all day. My dad would play once, sometimes he'd play twice. I was young then. I played 54 holes, I don't know, 2 or 3 times in a day. And thought about going back out because you know how it never gets dark there.
Yeah.
You know, and you get done at like 7 o'clock. You're like, hey, I could get another 18 holes in. But you're like, okay, I got to eat supper. But anyway, so one morning I'd played Macrahannis. My dad had actually said he didn't want to play that morning, and he said, I'll just meet you for lunch in the clubhouse after you're done. So I walked back to where I was staying, and the man that owned the place, Mr. Baxter was his name. Great guy. I stayed there several times over the years. He's passed away now, but I was standing out. He was standing out in front of the house, and he said, hey, Jim, how'd it go? I said, well, it was great. Loved it, of course. And, he said, what are you going to do this afternoon? And I said, well, I'm going to play Macrahannis again. I'm going to meet my dad for lunch. And we're just going to go play again. I said, I've already bought a day ticket, which was only 18 pounds then, Jeff, for a day ticket, 18 pounds. I mean, think about that. That's insanity.
Yeah.
So anyway, he said, well, look, you need to go over to this place called Denaverty. He said, it's about 15 or 20 minutes from here. He said, and this was before, Google Maps and stuff.
Right.
He said, I'll tell you how to get there. And you know how hard it was. It was not easy to get around back then because you had to be looking at a map, and you really needed somebody to navigate for you.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Because you get lost real easy. So anyway, he said, no, he said, go over here. He said, it's 5 pounds. There'll be an honesty box. He said, you'll love it. And I thought, okay, I've played Macrahannis 3 days in a row. I said, listen, so I went and met my dad for lunch, and I said, hey, Dad, we're going to Denaverty this afternoon. And my dad was always up for anything. He said, okay, it sounds good to me. And we went over there, and we had this little map that Mr. Baxter drew, and it was kind of a lot of it was a 1-lane road. And we got down there, and there was nobody there. The clubhouse was locked. There was nobody on the course, and there was an honesty box by the first tee. And we got there. It was pretty early in the afternoon, and it was 5 pounds. We had cash. We each put 5 pounds in, and we played the place, and we just absolutely loved it. And my dad shot even par 66, and we loved it. And we actually went back around again and put another 5 pounds in. And I just to this day, I mean, I wound up joining Macrahannis. Mr. Baxter helped me join. But I've played Denaverty every time I've went, and now I'm a member there. And that's how that happened. It was really and I found that even on this last trip, even after all these times that I've been, I stayed with a good friend of mine in Lakilpid, Robbie Wilson. And I had several days where I said, Robbie, where should I go tomorrow? And he sent me to a place called Isle of Seal Golf Course. He sent me down to Tarbert, which I knew about Tarbert, but I'd never been there. And I still find places like that. And I love the sense of discovery of finding these places. And again, you almost always wind up meeting people, talking to people. People are interested that you're there. They want to know about what you think about their course. And as an added bonus, it's just not very expensive. You can play for 15 pounds or 10 pounds, or you play all day for 20. I mean, so yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of these places. I love them. Scotland has more of them than any country in the world by far. And they're just great. And I'm a massive fan, and they're good golf too. I mean, and you don't have to beat yourself up. And that's the other thing I tell people. Yeah, I love Carnoustie, and I like Muirfield, but you're going to beat yourself to death if you play those places. They're hard. I mean, let's be honest about it. You also need to work in some places where you make a few birdies and have some fun. And not that you don't have fun. You know what I mean? Not that you don't have fun. I'd play Muirfield tomorrow if somebody told me they invited me. But the point is, don't beat yourself to death. Have fun and play some of these other little places too.
Well, I'll tell you what, I follow you on Twitter, and you reposted something, I think it was yesterday, about a course called Kinghorn outside of St. Andrews. I've been there 25 times. I've never heard of Kinghorn.
It is a great little course, and the guy that wrote about it is UK golf guy on Twitter. But I've been there once and loved it. It's like 4,200 yards, crazy holes, blind holes. I mean, I have to admit, I love quirky stuff. I just do. Denaverty's got, I'm trying to think how many blind holes Denaverty, 4, 5, 6. And Denaverty's 4,800 yards, and but it's you still got to shoot a score, and there's more par threes than a normal course. There's only one par 5, but it's not easy. And I mean, I talk to the members that play in the competitions, and I've played in some. There are days when 2 or 3 or 4 over is going to win the Open that day. I mean, it's all relative to me. I just think that, golf is golf, and you still got to shoot a score, and it doesn't really matter, to me at least, how long it is. And
well, not only that, but look at Shishgang with 12 holes, right? I mean, there are a lot of Americans who go, I'm not going to play there. I can't. 12 holes, and that's a quirky layout.
Yeah, it's in my top 5. I love it. I played it 3 or 4 times this last trip. Absolutely love it. Some of the holes are just incredible. All the holes are incredible. Yeah. I mean, where else are you going to have a 12-hole course? There's a front 6 and a back 6 on the scorecard, which makes me laugh. Even every time I go there, I still laugh about it. I took my son on the trip before last, one of my sons, and he laughed about that for first 3 holes when he saw the scorecard. But it's great. I mean, it only needs to be 12 holes. I had the pro there I've talked to a lot on the last few trips. And he asked me this last trip, we'd played a bunch, and he said, would you change anything about this place, Jim? And I just looked at him. I said, absolutely not. I would not ever change a single thing about this. Because they talked over the years about there's room to add holes. There's even a plan in one of the books I've got about expanding it to 18 holes. And I'm like, no, don't touch anything like this.
Well, you mentioned a couple there. You mentioned blind holes, and Americans would never design a blind hole today. Again, the first course we played was Prestwick. So you get to the par 3, I think it's called Himalayas. They've got a white rock up on the hill. You're literally hitting over a rock, right? And when you leave that hole, you ring a bell so that the next group can. And then
you told me
I think it's
that.
the 17th hole, Jim, is they've got the Alps, and then beyond that, they've got the Sahara Desert, sand trap, right? It's just brilliant, right? I mean, and I know there are people go, I don't like all the blind shots. It's like, well, this is how it was. Old Tom laid it out.
I'll tell you a quick story about the Alps. The last course I played on this trip in August, when I was there for a little over a month, and it's what I'm writing my next book about. I had played it with Chris. It was my last day there. Chris McBride was caddying for me, and a couple of guys joined up with us. There was a guy from England, and this guy I actually knew happened to be around, and he joined up. And I wasn't playing that well. I'd made a few pars, but Prestwick is kind of hard. And anyway, we got to 17, and the 17 is a hard hole. And you look at you're standing on the tee, and you're like, where am I going to hit the ball? Because you've got to hit it in a certain spot. There's just nowhere to miss. I mean, you got to hit it in the fairway. So for some reason, I hit a good drive, and we got out there, and I was right in the middle of the fairway, and Chris was like, you need to hit a 7-iron. And he said, there's like 3 rocks on top, or 3 sticks on top of that hill. And he said, go over the far left-hand pole with the 7-iron. And for some reason, I hit a good shot. And he said, shot, immediately. Like, that's like the highest compliment you can get from a caddy in Scotland.
Shot.
And so we get up. He said, "That's going to be good, Jim." So we get up over the hill, the dune, and you're right. That sand trap there, which you're dead. The Sahara is there, and my ball is like 10 feet from the hole. And he was mad. He said it should be closer than that. It was 10 feet from the hole, and he studied that putt like it was, for the British Open, and somehow I made it, and he hugged me. And my point is, I made a birdie on the Alps. I don't even care what I shot the rest of the day. I could care less. And I hit 3 good shots. And but what a great hole, and what a sense of. I tell people, like, is there anything better than climbing a hill like that and the anticipation of where the ball is going to be? It's just fun. It's part of the fun. There's nothing really like it,
Well, I'll tell you another thing that reminds me of. You're talking about just pure fun. And Hayden, you're going to love this place, Machrihanish. It was the second course that my dad and I played, Jim, on our trip. Is there a better starting hole in golf?
No.
I mean, Hayden, it's a crescent shaped along the ocean, right? The wind is howling off your left. But the caddy says, hit it 50 yards out into the ocean. I swear to God, I hit it just like he told me. That ball just drifted right over and dropped like a bird in the middle of the fairway. It's one of the best. I mean, so Jim, to your point, like climbing the hill and seeing your ball, the anticipation of where did my ball land, taking your caddy's advice against every instinct in your body to hit it 50 yards out over the ocean and have it drift over the beach and land in the middle of the fairway.
Yeah, I love Machrihanish. I was a member there for 15 years. And this last trip I played with my friend Robbie that I was mentioned earlier. We played in an open. It was a 2-man. It was a best ball. And open competitions over there are another thing that I love about Scotland. And I tell people to try, if you can get in one, do it, because you can play for 10 or 15 pounds and it's a competition. You just meet people. Anyway, we were playing and I hit it. I hooked my drive down, and there's all these people watching on the first tee. And I hooked my drive down on the beach, and there was these kids walking on the beach, and everybody yelled, screamed 4 at them. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. And, but the beach is in play. So I could see my ball. I was playing one of those black and yellow Callaway soccer balls, and I could see it down there. And I told Robbie, I said, I'm going to go down there and play it. And he got a picture of me going down there, but I made a 5 from down there. I got it back in the fairway and got it up on the green, and wound up making a bogey. And I think I had a stroke, so we made it. We had a net par. So, but nice. Yeah, it was so embarrassing with all those people watching. But then, now thinking back on it, hitting a shot off the beach, and it's such a great place. The front 9 there, I would maybe the greatest front 9 in the entire world, quite honestly. But I love the whole course, but those holes in the dunes on the front and that first hole, and yeah, you're right on target. It's so good.
Well, I'm a member at Murray, and I know that you were up there in 2019. You mentioned you played at Cove. Did you play Hopeman as well? Have you played Hopeman?
I did not play Hopeman. We wanted to. Jake, my son, was with me, and he was like, Dad, we got to go to Hopeman. And we just didn't have time. We had really, that day I wanted Jake to see as much as possible. And we had played Fraserburg, and we'd actually played Cullen, and we were not even going to play anymore. We were leaving the Cullen parking lot, and this friend of the guy we played with, George, he's like, what are you going to do? And I said, we're going to drive up and try to play Cove. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, well, you've already. And I said, well, Jake, we really want to go there. And so it was like a 30 or 40 minute drive. We got there late, and you drive down this sandy 1-lane road about 3/4 of a mile to get down to where the little trailer, not a clubhouse, but a little trailer thing is. And we wound up playing it at the end of the day, and the sun was just low, golden. I've actually got a story coming out on No Laying Up here, hopefully in the next few days, about that playing Cove C. And it's got some of the best pictures of that entire trip. I've never seen the sun like that in my anywhere I've ever been. It just illuminated everything I was there, Jeff, when the gorse was out. It was just the whole thing was on fire. Really, it just I love Cove C. It's kind of a homemade little course, but I tell people to go there. And I want to play Hopeman. I did play Lossiemouth once a long time ago, but I love that area. It's just you just gotta pick and choose sometimes. When you've got
exactly. Exactly. Well, Hopeman's got a hole. I think it's the 7th or 8th. It's par 3, 150 yards, but it's 150 yards out and 150 yards down to a cove. And the day that we were there were dolphins playing in the cove. I mean, it's like the most beautiful hole ever. Paul Lowry said it's his favorite par 3 in the world. It's not worth the drive from, if you're staying down at Dunaverty, it's not worth the drive up. You would want to play a handful of courses up there, but it's wonderful as well. You mentioned before we went on that you played Durness. That's a fantastic course. You mentioned Fraserburgh. Have you played Peterhead?
I have played Peterhead. I really liked it. The day I played it, the wind was blowing about 35 miles an hour, and I've got some pictures in one of my albums of the flag sticks almost sideways on some of the holes. I like it. In fact, the trip before last, Jake and I played Cruden Bay, and the hotel we stayed at was right next to Peterhead, and we actually walked out and looked at a couple of the holes, and but we didn't play it. But I played it on a trip, and I tell people that it's a good course to pair with Cruden Bay if you're if you want to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like it.
There's and Hayden, I can't wait for you to see Cruden Bay the dunes are monstrous. You got blind shots. I hit a drive, Jim. I don't remember what hole it is. It's on the back 9. It's like a drivable par 4. It's a blind shot. And Jim, I hit it perfect. It was the caddy told me where to hit it. It was perfect. We never found the ball.
That's probably 14.
Yeah. That is 14.
Yeah.
I'm like,
well, you can't see perfect. You can't see anything from the tee. I mean, the tee shot is blind, really, and then the second shot is blind. And
exactly.
When you stand on that tee, you're like, where in the world do I hit this ball? Because to the left is nothing but gorse and just a big mountain of gorse, and on the right is the ocean. And it looks like you've got nowhere to. Now you do have some room there. You just got to trust yourself. But you're right. It just Cruden Bay is in my top 10. It's another one that I've played a bunch over the years and stayed there a lot. I love staying there. There's a couple of really nice little hotels there, and it's changed. It's gotten a lot more popular since I first started going, but it's very unique. And the 8th hole there is one of my favorite holes in Scotland, the short par 4. It's just, and when you go up now, the 9th, they read from sometime in the last 7 or 8 years, they redid the 9th and 10th holes, and it's really an improvement, believe it or not. You get up to that 9th tee now, and it's probably one of the greatest views in the world of golf, really.
I agree.
Yeah.
Hayden, I've been dominating this conversation. You haven't been able to get a word in edgewise. Why don't you?
I mean, you guys have so much history of playing the same golf courses. I'm just looking forward to, getting my toes in the sand. Y'all are really getting me hyped and ready to play. I think the biggest thing I'm looking forward to is the toughness of the courses, the blind shots, the wind. These courses over here, there's barely any wind, no blind shots. There might be some trees, but most of the time it's pretty open. You can hit it in the next fairway and be fine. It sounds like in between each hole there's weeds 10 10 feet high, an ocean on the right. And all I'm thinking about in my head is, if my driver's not on, I am leaving it in the bag, because there's no way I'm going to be hitting the fairway. I'll be hitting my fairway wood the whole time.
I mean,
Jim and I are about to say the same thing. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, there are situations, and you have to there are situations over there where if you get the ball up in the air at all with any kind of spin on it, it is gone. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, it's just gone. And you have to just, I don't know, you learn from experience. I mean, you gotta scale back and try to keep it down and get it in play. And, in those kind of situations.
Well, two things about that too, Hayden, and Jim, I know you'll agree. I played in a tournament over there at Murray, the Murray Open, and you would love this, Jim. It's 125 pounds. You get 6 guaranteed rounds of golf for 125 pounds, right? And that's for visitors. The members, I think it's 25 pounds. But anyway, I played in that competition, and one day the wind was blowing 40 miles an hour. And I said, I can't even take driver out of the bag. So par fours, I was hitting 5-iron. Like I was playing for scrape it low down the middle, hit another one down the middle, and if it got to the green, fine. If not, I could chip on. And if I could get a par or a bogey, I would be happy. But because I knew that everyone's score was going to be high. But the other way that you use a 5-iron there, Hayden, is Jim was alluding to, at the Duel of the Sun in 77 at Turnberry, those courses get so burnt out that you could hit a 5-iron along the fairway and it would run. If I hit my 5-iron 190 yards, you could hit it 230 in those conditions. Why hit driver if I can hit it 230 and it just runs forever?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to go to the driving range and start working on my Stinger 4-iron.
It's a good shot to have. I mean, you could play a lot of holes with a 4-iron over there if you got the wind, and you just have to be. It's more of a strategic game. That's the other thing I like about it. I mean, I love playing these courses with members, and then they'll say, well, you really need to be down the right-hand side here, or you really need to be on the left, or you got to play it off this mound, or there's so much of that over there that's so much fun that it's just different than the way we play here. A lot, and that's something I love about it.
Well, Jim, I played at Rye down in Southern England with a gentleman, and this is to your point. I got hooked. You have to have a member to play with. They won't let you out on your own. And so I meet this guy, David Price. We become great friends. We played multiple times. We talk to this day. It's I don't know, 15 years later. And I remember playing there the first time. The first hole, our balls are out near the same spot in the fairway. And I says, what's the distance to the pin? He goes, I have no idea. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, I play by feel. And for me, this is a knockdown 6. He literally, it's all by sight. This looks like a 6-iron. This looks like a 9-iron, right? One more story about him that you'll appreciate, Jim and Hayden. Next time I went, I took a friend of mine, and they only played 2 balls on the day that we were there. So he says, I'm not going to play. I'll caddy for you guys. Can you imagine that? So he brings 2 trolleys from his house that are electric. He hooks them all up, and he walked the 18 holes with us, telling us where to hit, and he didn't play. I mean,
it's interesting. It's another thing I love about. I love the formality of things over there too. I mean, I love the fact that at Muirfield they only play foursomes, in the afternoon. Well, the members may be all they ever play, to be honest. But that kind of thing. And those guys fly around the golf course, playing alternate shot. I mean, I remember I was there playing, and you could only play as a single in the afternoon, or you had to play alternate shot. And I went out by myself. This was a trip I was on with my dad, and I had a caddy. and we were going around, I thought fast, and he looked back and he said, "Oh, these members are going to catch up to us." They were playing a foursome, and by God, they caught up to us on that par three, the one, I think it's 16. They caught us on the tee, and I just have never seen the speed at which they went around this golf course. I let them go through. I mean, imagine that, a foursome playing through a single.
Well, we got passed it at Gullen, a foursome I was with, by 4 elderly women. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
But I think that these stories, and the comment that you made a moment ago, Jim, you love the formality, but you love the informality as well.
I do. I actually love the informality as much as, a place like Prestwick and Muirfield, where there's some, history and rules and things, but I love the informality of Dunaverty and Machrihanish and Gerlach and all these other places I've been to. So I probably like that a little bit more, but I do love it when people say, well, they only play foursomes on Saturday, or I just think that's fun,
Well, I think the other thing people need to experience, whether it's the two places I think that have the best food, Royal St. George's and the lunch at Muirfield. Right? So Hayden, you show up, you have to have a jacket and tie on. You go into the locker room, you get into your golf togs, you go out and play, you come back, you shower, put on your jacket and tie again, and you sit down to the finest. It's like Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner they've got a carvery set up, roast beef, ham, turkey. I mean, it's incredible. So I agree with you that I love the formality of certain clubs and the informality of places like Dunaverty or Murray or Gerlach or the others.
Yeah, I have to say I probably prefer the informal a little bit better, but I do like those experiences of, some of doing that. And I did the same thing at Muirfield, as you said, and it's fun. And I remember me and my dad did it, and we, everybody you were supposed to be there at 9:00, I think. And so we got there like 10 minutes till 9. And they've got that little covered parking area there.
Right.
It's very unusual for Scotland. Well, we got there and there were no cars, and I was like, something's weird here. So we parked and we walk up to the gate, and we had our coat and tie on. And the guy at the gate said, "Sir, you are early today." And it was like 10 minutes to 9. And I remember and I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to kick us out of here. And so we started walking back to that car park, and all of a sudden cars start all pulling in like right at 9:00. All these people knew what they were supposed to do, and we didn't. So it was we still laugh about that.
Well, Jim, we want to change it up a little. We'll talk about American golf for a moment. And you've fallen in love with a course in Tennessee called Sweeten's Cove. You've even written a book. I bought, I'm glad that I can contribute to your retirement. I know that you're making a ton of money on this book and on the calendar. You'll be able to retire early because of my purchases.
My next trip to Scotland is what you're doing. But the calendar was, I did that and for my son. But the book, I do appreciate that. It's been great. I just, I found Sweeten's. If you don't mind me, just
we want to hear about it.
So, it was about 2016. My middle son Jake, he said, "Dad, I've heard about this golf course up in South Pittsburgh, Tennessee. I heard it on a podcast." And he said we need to go up there. He sent me the podcast. It was the one that it was a fried egg podcast that Rob Collins was on, and it was one of the early ones, probably one of the third or fourth ones they ever did. And I listened to it, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds really interesting. I'd never heard of this, and I'm a golf nut, and we live an hour and a half from there, I guess. And so we started off, went up there, and I won't get into all the details, but we got up there, we got rained out the first trip, we went back, and I just fell in love with it. It reminded me, and if you've read my book, the first start of it, it reminded me of going to a place like Machrihanish or Dunaverty. Just the sense of discovery of you're out in the country and you're going down this winding road and you come around a corner and all of a sudden there's this golf course sitting out there in front of you. And I just fell in love with it. I sort of got obsessed with it, and I started going every weekend, and just became friends with Rob Collins, the architect, and became a member. They have a few members there, not many, but anyway, I was playing in a tournament up there, and Rob gave this speech at the end of the tournament, and it's I've got it in my book somewhere, but
yeah.
And I was standing there with all these people, and he started crying while he was giving this speech, and I thought, all right, this story needs to be written about. And I called him about a week or two later, and I said, hey, and I'd done a little bit of writing for No Laying Up, and I've written a story for Golfer's Journal, and hey, and I said, look, man, I said, I've got a crazy idea. And he said, what? And I said, I want to write a book about Sweetens. And he said, let's do it. And it took me 2 years, and it was hard. This was the first book I'd written, and I was doing a lot of other writing during that time, but it's been great. I've had so many people get in touch with me about it and that have bought it. And we're still, it's only been out for a few months, so we're still kind of promoting it. And, I appreciate you
I'm promoting it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you. We got mentioned, Michael Bamberger wrote a story on golf.com a couple of weeks ago and mentioned it, and had a link to it. And, it's just, it's just been fun. And, it's the reaction I've gotten from people that tell me how much they love it, and they've gone there because a lot of people had already played Sweetens, but a lot of people have gone there that had never been. And, it was a hard process, but I'm already into my second one now. And, so it's just become my,
well, you're doing the same thing to Sweetens that you did to Dunaverty. You're getting it. You're filling up the tee sheet for them, right? So I told Hayden and a couple of my buddies, we need to go up there.
It's only 2 hours for me.
Yeah, you guys need to go. You'll love it. I hate to put words in your mouth. I have never sent anybody there that did not love it. Now, I can understand. To me, there's nothing like Scotland in the United States. I mean, I've been out to Long Island, and I've not played, but I've been to the Open out there at Shinnecock, and that area is a little bit, maybe somewhat like it, but the feeling of being at these places like Dunaverty and Machrihanish, and Gairloch and what have you, that's what Sweetens reminds me of. Now, the golf is a little bit different, but it's similar in a lot of ways. I mean, Rob has designed it where you can, if it's dry, you play shots on the ground, you can play shots off mounds. It reminds me a lot of Scottish golf, just the feel of it. And it really got me back a lot into playing again. I mean, I had gotten tired of, places like Ross Bridge, and, not that there's anything wrong. Don't take that the wrong way. There's nothing wrong with that, but 8,000 yard golf courses that take 6 hours to play. I just, Sweetens is kind of the antidote to that to me. And,
right.
I love it. And, obviously I've written a book about it, but you guys ought to go. And, there's a couple of good places to. No Laying Up has a house, for rent across from Number One Fairway. And, that's a big house, but then there's another little place, the Back Nine Retreat, I think it's called E9 Retreat. It's right across from the first tee. It's just a cool place to go and stay and play a lot. You play all day if you want to. Well, you have, they only sell day passes now. So, if you get a pass, you play all day. And, so anyway, it has a lot of the Scottish feel to me. And, I've become a good friend of Rob, and the stuff he's doing in golf now. He's got this course that's going to open next year in Nebraska called Landman that I think is going to blow people away. I've told people it reminds me of a cross between Cruden Bay and Royal Portrush.
Holy cow!
Yeah, so it's. But yeah, if you don't mind me mentioning my publisher will kill me if I don't say, but it's back9press.com, the number 9. So back9press.com. And that's where you can get it from. It's also on Amazon, but we make a little bit more money if you order it directly from the publisher. So
Nice.
but yeah,
Well,
thank you.
It's a fantastic book, and it's a very intimate story. Now you got another book coming out, and tell us, do you have a working title for that? And tell us a little more about that.
I do. It's called, the working title is called When Revelation Comes. And it's going to be about the month that I spent in Scotland this past year. I don't want to get too, I'm not going to bring things too far down, but my son was a college golfer and a junior golfer, and he passed away last May very unexpectedly. And anyway, I was trying to figure out, for the longest time. Well, honestly, we were in the final editing of my Sweeten's book when it happened. And I just told the publisher, I'm like, I can't, just forget it. I can't even finish this, and just forget about it. But he said, no, I'm going to help you. So that helped me get through a little bit of that first few weeks of just not knowing what to do and can't even get out of bed. And things were I just thought I've got to get away. And I called my friend Robbie, who I mentioned earlier. And I said, Robbie, he knew what had happened. And I said, I've got to do something. I've got to get away. Can I come? And I couldn't even get it out of my mouth. And he said, Jim, you can stay with me as long as you want to. And he lives about less than an hour from Machrihanish and Dunaverty. And he's a member at Machrihanish. He said, just come over here, stay as long as you want. He said, do whatever you want to. He said, I don't care. He said, I've got to work some, but I can take off and play with you some. And so it's really about, and I wrote a little story on No Laying Up that a lot of people read. And I got I don't know, the book's about that time I spent there and the people I met and how people, and it's about the golf, but about how people treated me and that knew about what had happened, and how Robbie treated me. And just the invitations I got from people to play places that knew about what had happened. And I'm also going to have, I've made all these trips over the years. I'm also going to have some flashbacks to, because my first chapter is about the first time I went to Dunaverty in 94, which I was telling you about earlier. But it's mainly going to be about that trip. And I had you mentioned something about, Jeff, about being there when your dad passed away. And there's something, and I don't want to get too mystical here, but there's something about Scotland that is a little bit, I don't know, spiritual or mystical to me, at least. And I had several times when I was there that I felt like Jordan was with me, and some things that happened and that I'm going to write about. And I've actually written a really pretty long story for Golfer's Journal that is going to come out in May. That is really kind of a condensed version. I sort of call it a condensed version of this book. I'm going to take it. It really kind of gives the outline of what the book's going to be about in kind of a shorter version. But yeah, it's going to go from Dunaverty to all the way up to Gairloch and out to Isle of Colonsay and Brora and Ray and Wick, way up north, and back to, and the last chapter is at Prestwick. That's where I played the last day, which was ironically the first, like you, the first course I ever played in Scotland was Prestwick. So it just kind of
Jim, it sounds like it's going to be a cross between the writing of Jim Finnegan, Michael Bamberger, Shiva's Irons, and Jim Hartzell. It's kind of going to be
that's probably a good way to put it. I mean, I've written, I'm into it pretty heavily right now, and I'm trying to get it done by May so we can get it out this fall. I mean, it's all that, and just, I had some stuff happen to me that you can't make up. I mean, this, meeting Peter Alice, meeting Jim Finnegan. look, this is a quick story. I mean, I was the day this last trip, Robbie and I we got invited to play Gullen #1, which is a great course, as you know, and North Berwick in the afternoon. So we drove over from his house all the way over there, played Gullen, ate lunch in the clubhouse, and Gullen's not easy to walk. I mean, it's a
That hill is crazy.
Yeah, the hill, it'll kill you. So we were eating lunch, and I was tired as I could be, and but I was looking forward to North Berwick, and I said, man, I don't think I got to get a caddy, or I'm just not going to make it. So I called. He said, "Well, call the starter." So I called the starter, and we were like 45 minutes from teeing off, and the guy was very nice. He said, "Well, look," he said, "I don't know. I don't think I can find anybody. It's too late, but I'll do what I can." So we walked up over there, and I was like, I'm going to die trying to carry my bag, or even with a push cart. And I walked up to the starter, and I said, "Hey, did you find me a caddy?" And he's like, "Yeah, I got you one. He's right behind you." And the guy walked up and introduced himself. And it was Katrina Matthews' husband, who caddies for her on the European tour. And I said, "What are you doing?" It took me a minute. I realized who he was after a minute. I'm a kind of a golf nut, but I knew that he was her caddy, and we figured out who he was. And I said, "Well, man, what are you doing out here it was on a Saturday afternoon?" And I said, "What?" And he said, they live like right by the golf course. And he said, "I just like meeting people." And he said, "I'm at home by myself." And he called, and I had the best time. This guy's caddied on the women's tour for 20 years.
Well, and Katrina Matthews was Ryder Cup captain.
He was the captain of the Karsten Solheim Cup.
Right. That's right. What did I say? Did I say Ryder Cup? Yeah, Solheim Cup. I'm sorry.
We talked about that all the way around. It was only a few weeks from when they were going to have that, and he was so much fun and so nice, and just that kind of stuff you can't make up. So it's going to be a lot like that, a lot of the stuff that's happened to me, and a lot about the golf, and
well, we can't wait. You know what we'll do? We'll buy a bunch. We'll give at Christmas. We do like a 12 days of Christmas where we give stuff away. We'll buy a couple dozen and give them away, and it'll be just in time for Christmas, right? So Hayden, that you can count on that being in your stocking this year.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Jim's new book.
My publisher, he'll kill me if I don't get it ready in time. But it's this one. Honestly, I've got to be honest. The Sweeten's book was hard to write. It took me 2 years. I had to interview 40 or 50 people, and it was hard to track people down. And I did a bunch of research. This one is really just coming out of my head, and stuff that's happened to me. And so far it's been going. Now I've got a long way to go, but it's a different type of book than the Sweeten's book. It's more of a like To the Lynx Land, or something like that. So anyway, I thank you for asking about it. And if you get Golfer's Journal, it's issue 20. I think they're on 18 now. There'll be a big story.
Well, I do get that, yeah. And I've got 4 minutes before my next meeting. I've got one last question for you.
Sure.
You've been very generous with your time. So what's on your golf bucket list for Scotland? Is there anything left on it?
Yes. This is you. Have you been spying on me in my office or something? I was sitting here scribbling out a list this morning. I'm trying to get back over and meet Robbie in May. I've never been to Askernish. I have never been to Isle of Harris golf course, and I've never been to Iona, which I really want to play those three. Iona is a 11-hole course, I think. That's just, so those three, I'm looking at this list. Those are the three that are on my list. I mean, we're going to try to go, I'm going to play Panmure and Anstruther, and I'm going to go down to Denaverty, but we're going to, that's it. I want to try to hit Iona, then go up to Askernish, and then go to Harris. And I've never done it. So yeah, that's a good question. I just
I've
wrote
got
that.
a title for your third book:
Okay, what?
Planes, Trains, Automobiles, and Ferries. You're gonna to go to those places are so far out of the you can't get to them without a ferry.
No, no. I won't. I know you got to go, but ferry golf is another discussion altogether. To me, it's one of the most fun things you can do is go to Erin and play Shishkin, or go out to, South Uist and but yeah, it takes some logistics, but that's part of the fun. And the ferries, they all have, if you're not driving, they all have a bar. Uh,
Exactly.
I mean, it's like being on a cruise ship. I mean,
Yeah.
so you sit there, get you a attendance, and watch the world go by for 2.5 hours. And yeah, I love it, man. But yeah, it's a good question. Those are the three I'm trying to. In fact, I'm supposed to talk to Robbie this weekend and see about,
Getting a
making
plan.
sure he can go work for it. So,
Jim, we appreciate you taking some time with us and giving your experiences in Scotland. Obviously, you love the game and you love Scotland, and we can see that. We're looking forward to your new book. Jeff, anything else?
Hayden, I apologize for not monopolizing the conversation, but
No, I've enjoyed listening. Y'all,
I wish we had more time,
compliment
because
each other well.
it's clear Jim and I could talk about this for days at a
yeah,
time.
absolutely.
if you ever want to do it again, and maybe after I take this next trip,
Yeah.
but yeah, and certainly when my book comes out for sure. But look, I've loved it, guys. I could talk about this until everybody falls asleep. So I appreciate it, and thank you for inviting me to be on.
Absolutely. We'll have you on after your next trip.
Yeah.
Talk
Sounds
about the
good.
ferry ride.
Okay.
Thank you so much again for joining us. Jim was amazing. You can tell Jeff and Jim could go all day talking about their experiences in Scotland and the small courses that they've played. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Please hit the like, subscribe, share, and follow buttons, and tune in next week. Thank you.